Okay, unfortunately the original presenter for our next presentation fell ill overnight, so we're very grateful to Andy Davidson for agreeing to step up and give us an update on EuroIX activities and the IXPDB.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Oh, I need the twitcher again now. So you've heard EuroIX mentioned a couple of times in presentations, thank you, this morning. And Rebecca was due to talk about some of the other activities that EuroIX are up to, but as Chris said, she's not very well this morning, so I'm happy to talk about some of those. EuroIX is the trade association of public peering that works in this region, so it's a forum at which and a community and an organisation in which internet exchange points can collaborate on stuff in a neutral manner. And I'm here, I don't work for EuroIX, but I'm elected to the board by our membership and community, along with a bunch of other people. So that's why I'm able to talk about this subject. So what is EuroIX, the European Internet Exchange Association? It's an organisation that's owned by 78 members affiliated. That's made up of 54 internet exchange points operating within the EuroIX region, which is the same as the RIPE NCC region, from 49 countries, operating over 100 different peering lands. It's also made up of 24 IXP organisations from the rest of the world, and the newest members of EuroIX are Digital Realty, Saudi Arabia Internet Exchange and the Costa Rican Internet Exchange. We also have a group of organisations called the patrons, who are patron members of EuroIX. These are organisations that are important to the operating and the function of internet exchange points by being vendors of some kind, such as switch makers, optic makers, data centre partners. We invite the patrons to our forums and to collaborate on projects with us, so that the people who are making transmission equipment that exchanges buy and are making switches that exchange points use are involved in the work that we're doing, because that better informs their product design and what the products that they can offer to exchange points and build for exchange points. So it's actually a very, very useful cooperation. In terms of staff, there's Rebecca and Bijal based in London, and there's part-time support provided by Michael, the UK accountant, and a Dutch accounting firm, though we have rules that we have to follow which are very Dutch because we're a Dutch association. Here's a photograph of the board. I'll gloss over that. The programme committee worked very, very hard, very similar to the UKNOF programme committee, at putting together content and activities that will take place over 2 forums a year, which are very much like UKNOF meetings, but they are open to internet exchange point operators. So there's a few things in this presentation that we're going to talk about that EuroIX has been up to. Since near the beginning of the association, EuroIX has been surveying member IXPs each year based on their trends, stuff that they are doing. And that data is then published to people who complete the survey, so that IXPs can benchmark, are we operating similar services with similar policies in a similar way to other exchange points. The idea here being that if exchange points are similar and behave in similarly sane ways, there's benefits to the wider peering community that are connecting to the exchange points and using them. And the benchmarking questions are set and run by a group of volunteers within the community. And the 13th round, this is the 13th time we've run this annual benchmarking survey between participants, and some results have been published. And the answers look a little bit like this. Interesting long-term trends that have come through the survey is that internet exchange points are starting to offer more services than they used to, and we can see that services such as private VLANs are now operated by the vast majority of internet exchange points. We've seen services like multicast becoming less popular over time, but the internet exchange points are starting to offer, typically half of them also sell or resell co-location services. So if you're trying to explore new markets. You might find that the internet exchange point in a market that you're looking at is able to offer you advice or even co-location services. And speaking as myself rather than EuroIX, it's also interesting, let's use the word interesting, to note the amount of IXPs offering their own remote peering services, which may, depending on your view, might not have the positive effect on the internet that you think it does when you first start exploring them. Another interesting long-term trend we're seeing at internet exchange points is that now, whereas about 5 or 6 years ago it used to be that the vast minority of exchange points, a large minority of exchange points operated multilateral peering services. Now the vast majority, almost 90% of those who responded to the benchmarking survey, offer multilateral peering route servers. I think that I remember back in the days where I started being involved with EuroIX. This was 10 or 15 or so years ago, when I also started doing some work at LONAP, which I no longer do. With LONAP, we didn't have root servers at the time because the root server software simply wasn't reliable enough, if I'm honest. And quite a lot of work that was done at the EuroIX level to coordinate efforts, collect bugs, feedback, information together, which could be shared with the root server software developers in order to make it better and more fit for purpose. So able to offer best path calculation per ASN collected and stop crashing. That work was very, very successful, and you can see that as a result of that work that was done about 6 years ago, almost every internet exchange point seems to offer a multilateral peering service today. Some of the activities and work that the EuroIX community are doing together at the moment, an interesting piece of work being done that's to do with standardization, really, is internet exchange points are starting to collaborate on their use of large communities. A BGP large community is a way of tagging an announcement with a number which has meaning. So a meaning like this route was learned in data center A, or this route was learned in data center B, or a router in data center A and B. They can be attached to prefixes, and that meaning can be retained as they pass through your network. And internet exchange points sometimes can find it beneficial to accept or add communities if you're using, for example, a root server that an internet exchange point is making available. So an internet exchange point you might want to instruct a root server, don't send this prefix to networks that have AS number 12345, or don't send this prefix to networks that are connecting from outside of Europe if I'm an internet exchange point nominally in Europe. There's an area of work to standardize those so that internet exchange points use the same numbering schema. So a peer that connects to more than one IX only has to learn one family of communities in order to take advantage of this in many, many places. And when the numbering, so if we have a number that says this is a remote peer and that number is 5 or 6, then when you see 5 or 6 in the middle column of a large community, you know it always means the same thing because it's standardized. That's a piece of work that's going on at the moment. It's quite interesting. You can read more about it on our website if you have some interesting thoughts and feedback. And the IXP database is another important project that's a great piece of cooperation and collaboration between internet exchange points. The Internet Exchange Point database is a project of the Internet Exchange Point Federation, which is an association of Internet Exchange Point associations. In the same way that EuroIX exists, there's a similar grouping in the Asia-Pacific region, a similar grouping in the African region, similar grouping in the Latin American region, and this is an informal, it's actually it doesn't exist as an organisation. It's an informal grouping of associations, and we make sure that when one association does a piece of work, that is available to all of the other associations to avoid the duplication of work and to provide global coordination and cooperation when there is this standardisation work going on in any region, so that all regions get the benefit. The Internet Exchange Point Database, the IXPDB, is an authoritative, complete and public source of any kind of data relating to IXPs. So it's simply a JSON schema, some structured data, that collects information from IXPs in a standardized format and makes that available to peering networks, to researchers, to data centers, to anybody who wants that information in a standardized format. And it's similar to, for example, how peering DB structures data and information about peering networks that's maintained by the peering networks. This is a similar set of data that's maintained by the Internet Exchange Points. And very, very wise people who use and consume public sources of JSON to help them make decisions about peering, for example, would use both the peering DB database and, for example, the IXP database, because then you've got a more complete set of data. If someone's information is missing from peering DB, or someone's accidentally put the wrong information in peering DB, that can be flagged up because you're comparing the information supplied by the IXP as well, for example. The JSON schema, the way that this works, IXPs can publish information in a standardized format in JSON in a way that's described through this GitHub repository, and that's consumed by your IX. It can also be consumed directly by peering networks. If you don't want to use the IXPDB to aggregate that, you can just consume the feed from your IXP directly. If you're only connected to one or two IXPs, you can go straight to their online resource for this information. If you connect to a lot of IXPs, you can go to the IXP database where all of this will be aggregated and consume the data there. There's the benefit of this. The EuroIX has had a database since the very, very beginning, where Internet Exchange Points have been able to update information about themselves and who's connected, and etc., etc. But it's always collected manually. It had to be updated every time somebody connected, or somebody added a new switch or went into a new facility, or the rest of it. The IXP database is a way of populating that database that's existed for a very long time automatically. The IXP associations are holding workshops to support Internet Exchange Points who are looking to automate their automations and produce this data. And if you use either the Asteroid system or the IXP Manager system, you're automatically exporting your information under the you automatically exports the information to EuroIX via the JSON schema. You can see some information. I'll leave that up on the screen so that you can go and have a look at you can go and have a look at the IXP database. It's on this website. There's a mailing list for people who want to use and build tools against it if you want, and the API is available online. If you get a lot of value from that organisation and wish to fund the work of the Internet Exchange Federation or EuroIX, that's well received, because then this work can continue. I'll pause there if that's all right, and then ask if there's any questions.
Excellent. Thanks, Andy. Yeah.
I can see.
Neil.
Is it Neil? Thank you. There's two. Oh, there's
two then.
You won. You beat him. Andy, sorry, the communities thing. Is that a standard list for IXPs? Why would because I'm struggling with why would you even want communities? But that's a bigger debate. But why would you have someone create a standard list of communities? Especially in those two ranges.
So the large communities are a larger number space than the traditional BGP communities.
Yeah, I've read the RFC.
So the it allows additional meaning and additional context to be added than what was available in the 16-bit colon 16-bit space, and networks have been asking Internet Exchange Points to add more meaning to what they learn at the root servers. So this has been learned from a remote peering network, or this is learned
so
in
IXPs
building.
are going to write communities on other people's routes?
Well, at the point that they're passing through a root server, the IXP is already accepting that prefix and then doing a best path selection algorithm and then exporting it to someone else via the root server. So it's already passing through a BGP speaker at the root server. The traffic doesn't pass through.
But you're right. You're rewriting the message, the atom of the root.
Yep, this has happened for the last 15 years. People have been using.
You don't rewrite the atom of the root. You rewrite. All you're doing is passing through the message and sharing the message of where the reachability is.
So this only happens on root server peerings where you're passing through a BGP speaker that's operated by the Internet Exchange Point, and people have been using communities to signal, don't send this to XYZ peer, or send this only to XYZ peer.
But now you're going to add this. I'm really struggling with a use case. Is there a use case that I could read? Because if I was a pinball machine, I just went tilt.
Yeah.
Because I'm struggling with this.
Yes. So
who in here is a network that is advocating this slight madness?
Well,
who's brave enough to speak up?
Networks.
Oh, there's one at the back. Portfast, the world's largest ISP. Let's hear it, Tom. Give him a mic.
Can we get a mic up?
Sorry, Tom's a buddy. I'm just winding him up because he irritatingly annoys me on Twitter.
It's what I'm for.
Well, you don't have to follow me.
It's like, let's say you've got an IX that's in more than one place, and you don't want to send traffic.
But it's a root server.
Through a root server, you maybe don't want to send traffic all the way to Slough from Docklands or something like that.
Okay.
Let's say, well, if you have a router in Docklands and your peer,
why wouldn't you tag that community yourself?
You do. That's the point. You have to add meaning to the announcement. You as Mr. Network Operator wants to say, I want to connect to the route server and I want you to send all of my prefixes to all the other participants, but don't send it to remote peering participants, or don't send it to participants that meet this particular criteria. You, Mr. Network Operator, has to add that community. This means that if we use the same number in the middle at all Internet Exchange Points, you don't need to send number 1 to this IX, number 2 to this IX, number 3 to this IX for the same action.
So, okay, so sorry, I misunderstood that. So what you're saying is the ISP advertising the route to the root server is tagging this community?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I thought the way it sounded like it thought like you guys were writing the community from the root server.
There are use cases you could imagine that somebody might want that. For example, somebody wanting to receive all the routes but have them tagged if they are coming from a remotely connected. So,
how would you know that though?
Well, the IXP knows that because the IXP. So, speaking as myself and not speaking as EuroIX, there are some people there are some Internet Exchange Points that have done some wildly different things to what I would consider reasonable, such as building layer 2 broadcast domains that operate in more than one continent and calling it an Internet Exchange Point.
Luckily, those drugs aren't for sale in this country.
You would be surprised. But and there are networks that have connected to those but only want to reach other locally connected networks. And an IX, a root server signaling this prefix was learned in this continent, this prefix was learned in this city, might be useful to those networks. If this informational community is going to exist, it might as well be the same everywhere that uses it. I think that's a reasonable point.
No, that's reasonable. But the way it was pitched, as I said, I thought you were rewriting the communities, which I was thinking, my God.
No.
Okay, I think we had a further question just behind Neil there.
So is there any interest to push BCP 38 a bit more with the members of EuroIX? Because we keep happening, like on Wednesday, I think it was, we had a interesting route leak from Route 53 that was fairly effective. Is there any interest in pushing BCP 38 a bit more with both members of the IXs as well as the route servers? Because this has become a bit of a mess.
So the challenge is that the Internet Exchange Point normally is not able or willing to inspect the actual routing metric, the actual routing information between participants. If participant A and participant B have a peering session at an Internet Exchange Point, the Internet Exchange Point can't and doesn't want to see the actual prefix exchange. Where that does happen is via the multilateral peering root servers, and there's actually a lot of work being done both at the EuroIX level and at the Internet Society level to promote and endorse secure routing at root servers, and for this to become more and more and more normal and less socially acceptable not to prefix filter connections to multilateral peering root servers. There's the Manners for IXPs initiative on the Internet Society website is a good document to read about that, but
Okay.
I will stop because I could talk. That's a separate talk in
Yeah, I
itself.
think we could discuss this quite a while. Okay. Thanks, Andy.
Right, thank you.